Hello, Psych 307 students. Chris here, the TA. It's good to see you again. I'm just going to teach you today with this little video about what websites and what is a credible source. You know, what are some of the maybe websites that I can use or other sources in addition to using these journal articles that we've been finding. What else can I use to build my paper and my resource bank? So today I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And so a lot of us, we've been running into some problems where we're like, oh, I can't find journal articles that state maybe some of the statistics that I want to include. Like I want to include some national statistics about anxiety, for example, or depression, but I can't find any articles that say that, any peer-reviewed articles. Can I only use journal articles? Is it even allowed to consider other sources? And also maybe like what kind of sources can I use? So I'm here to talk a little bit about some of those things. So after talking to Dr. Hill, and from my experience, it's totally okay to use websites of credible institutions. That's the only caveat there. You can use websites, it just has to be for a credible institution. And this is a government, university, or national psychological organization, or related alliances and organizational websites. Those websites are okay. And I'm going to go through a few examples of what is good to use. So for example, on my screen right here, you can see that I have the National Alliance on Mental Illness. This is a credible organization, and the information that I get from here is also credible information. And so this is, for example, an example of a good source to use because there's lots of good information here. It's very official. Let's jump over here. We got the National Institute of Mental Health. This is also a very good institution to use. You can find a lot of good information here. It is a credible institution. Government right here, you can see the .gov. This one's a .org. Usually, if we're going into .coms, that's not the best direction to go. But I'm going to keep going with some of the other examples of institutions that are credible. So we got the CDC. Of course, we know the CDC is a credible institution. It's a government institution, so you can learn a lot about things from here. The American Psychiatric Association, and also the American Psychological Association. Those are also good. Even things like the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. It's a group of academics and clinicians that get together and they do research and they post their research here. And so now that we have an idea of some of these, some of the institutions that we usually include, I'm going to show you just some examples of using these. I'm going to show you my lit review that I did a few years back. I did mine on managing anxiety with meditation practices and mindfulness. So as you can see is my abstract. Going into the paper, as you can see, I cite them quite a bit. For giving my statistics and giving the background, using sources like this is super useful. So you can say I have on average 19% of adults suffer from, there's the National Institute of Mental Health. There's a poll from the American Psychiatric Association that I got, the American Anxiety and Depression Association of America, for example. And then usually getting into the bulk of my paper, I start citing more articles. See, but at the end of the day, if you need to include a stat or some sort of background into what you're talking about, it's always a good idea to consider some of these websites that are credible. Of course, one note on that is that I would want to make sure that most of the sources that you use are from credible journal articles, peer-reviewed journal articles. So a lot of the information that you cite should be from those. I would say put it at like 80 or 90% of those. You shouldn't have close to 50% just like of these websites, because then your paper will become a little less credible and you might run into some problems with grading. But yeah, so basically that's kind of one way that I do it, is using it to just give myself some statistics, and also sometimes you want to learn about symptoms of something, and sometimes the websites are very clear cut on that. Yeah, so that's pretty much going into those things right there. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things you should look out for, some non-credible resources. Psychology Today, it's a blog, it's like a magazine. I would not trust that resource. That's not a good source. And one of the ways you can tell, it's a .com, and on the website there's lots of ads. And it's, even though there might be individuals who are credible who post things on here, like sometimes you'll find Let's see, let's look up Psychology Today. You go in there and you can find, let's see, let's go into depression. Oftentimes, you'll have articles that are written by psychiatrists and psychologists. Let's do if you're depressed. Here's a good one. This might be something from here we go. This guy's a PhD. Why can't I use his source? Well, because it's a blog post for Psychology Today. It's not a good thing to use. However, if you do happen to do some research and find something like this, it's not a bad idea to look at maybe some of the sources that he used, or to look at his website. You can see that he's a professor of psychology. What you could do is you could use his name and look for some of the articles that he's done maybe in his tenure as professor here. So that's something you could use with some of these websites, is you could look them up. And in another video, I'm going to go through some of the ways you can look up research by professional, by academic. So that's one thing. I wouldn't cite directly Psychology Today. I would use them. Perhaps if you like this guy's research, you can look him up and find him somewhere else. Find articles somewhere else. Here's another one, psychologytools.com. Yet again, sometimes it's good to get some of this information. It's not credible for your paper for citing. However, if you get an idea from some of these websites in your preliminary research, there's no problem with that. It could, as long as it leads you to find some of the more credible stuff. Yeah, so let's see. We got this one, pricing, and we're going to say something. Medical news today. Okay, as you can see, this guy looks pretty credible. He's a PhD, but however, it's just a lot of ads, and it's just not credible as other institutional websites and stuff like that. So as always, remember that when you cite things, make sure that it's according to APA style. Make sure that the journal articles that you choose are peer-reviewed and within the last 10 years and following other parameters that are outlined in the course. And always remember to cite stuff. Super, super important. But yeah, so I hope that today you've been able to learn kind of a little bit about what are some of the credible resources to use in your paper. And as always, what's the reason behind this? What's the why? The why is so that you can have a credible paper yourself. A lot of you will choose to maybe get your paper submitted for BYU Intuition, which is the academic journal for BYU for the psych department. And in doing so, you're going to have credible resources. And going into your careers as well, it'll be good to know how to distinguish and how to cite properly and find the best resources and quality resources for your papers now and in the future. And thanks for coming today.